Greetings, fellow adventurers, and welcome to the Couple of Nerds podcast. I'm DnDWife, the creator of DnDWifeStories.com, and your co-host. Joining me is the man behind the screen, my brilliant dungeon master, and also my husband, Eguile. Say hi, Eguile.
Hey everyone, excited to be here sharing our nerdy adventures with all of you.
Absolutely. So what's Couple of Nerds all about? Well, we're diving into the realms of Extrayus, sharing our experiences, playing D&D in our apartment, and exploring the intricate tapestry of relationships both in and out of the game.
And we got some exciting segments for you all, from lore deep dives to crafting tips, artwork showcases, and relationship advice on and off the table. We've got a little bit of everything for every kind of adventurer.
So whether you're a seasoned adventurer or a tabletop newbie, we invite you to join us today. Tune in, relax, and enjoy the magic of Couple of Nerds. May your rolls be natural 20s and your adventures be legendary. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Couple of Nerds. I'm your host, DnDWife, and with me is my co-host, Dungeon Master and husband, Eguile.
How's it going, everyone?
Welcome, welcome. And, of course, for another one of our Comic Cave segments, we have our esteemed guest, digital artist, EntLynk.
Hello, hello.
Yay.
Thank you again.
Welcome to another episode. Thank you so much for joining us. How have you been? How's
Been
everything
good.
been going?
How's the road to recovery?
Recovering well. It was a hard first half, but I'm on the backswing this
Wisdom
time.
teeth suck.
Yeah,
That's
they
always
do.
good that you're on the mend. Well, I'm glad you're feeling so much better. I think that's best
Thank
for
you.
everyone, especially you. Not in so much pain, I think, and that'll help.
I
It'll help the
appreciate it, you
digital
guys.
art.
Channel the pain.
Yes, use it. But in today's Comic Cave segment, we are going to be introducing a new piece of artwork, a wonderful character portrait for our character Tobias, which I'm super
Tobias.
excited to cover. I think it's going to be really great. We've been doing these sort of character portraits, introducing everybody in the campaign. And each one has brought a sort of unique sort of mood, aspect, sort of the poses have given us different views into how they interact with the world as well. And so I think it's going to be really interesting to analyze this new one for Tobias. And I'm super excited.
Oh yeah, I mean, each one of these characters so far is not even close to being the same in any sense, sight, anyway.
Yeah.
They're all uniquely beings.
Mm-hmm. And I think it's because all of us as players are super different people, and we're all trying to go for pretty different characters.
Yeah, that was the coolest thing about our session 0, actually, was we realized, hey, like, none of us are, like, people. Like, we're not, like, normal. Like, everyone's got, like, something funky. Like,
You're not a pretty party.
No, we got a lot of crazy looking people, but yeah, we don't have any humans in the party. That's certainly interesting. And it's going to play, I think, a very interesting part when we end up heading to certain places that aren't maybe as welcoming, or maybe just a little more like confused as to who we are and why we're there.
Definitely, because right now we're in the Mirren continent, so which is actually where this character Tobias is from. We get to interact with a lot of like anthropomorphized like animal characters. So humans are kind of like not normal necessarily. They're the weird ones right now.
Yes.
So we have the luxury of getting by easily right now.
We are on the Mirren continent, which is where the beast folk live. So we do have a lot of the different types. Like Tobias is a lionfolk that, we met as we landed in Kalmarha, which is the coastal port, little, I wouldn't say town because it's not that big. It's like a little outpost port, barely a village. And so we met him there. He was selling food, and that's kind of where we ended up. And so I really love this sort of iteration of what he looks like when we first met him. You want to go over a little bit of what he looks like?
Sure thing. So from top to bottom, we've got this black Leonin gentleman. He's like younger. He's like coming of age.
Yeah.
And he's got like a cloak on. So he's got this like maybe like a half cloak. It only goes down to like his like waist, a little past his waist. And he's got a little bit of armor on. I want
Not enough to really protect, but
No, he's got like
more stylistic.
Definitely.
Some pauldrons, maybe a few bracers, but not full armor. It's just like little pieces here.
He's
and
like
there.
working on his collection. I kind of imagine, based on what we know of his character at the table, he, with his background, he must have had some of this stuff with him before joining the caravan.
Yeah.
So I figured he really keeps this stuff close to him. Same thing with one of the little touches that I got from talking with the player themselves was he actually has a little purple armband tucked underneath his cloak, and that signifies kind of like his clan. Like where he's from a little bit.
So much nuance to Tobias.
Yeah, I got a lot of really great feedback from his player. And so, because I actually didn't really have like much of a direction to go with at first, but then like he was like, oh, he definitely has this cloak, and he was very specific about like the reference he was making with it. I think it was like Assassin's Creed, I want to say. It kind of gives that vibe.
It definitely gives a little bit of that vibe.
But yeah, the main issues, like I used the 3D modeling, same thing as I did with like the Bricky portrait, where just to get the proportions correct. But this one I did a lot more finagling with it myself, just because he's got the different features. Like I didn't really have a good like model for like this anthropomorphized lion face or like the legs. Those are very new to me. Drawing like the more feline joints on the legs.
Those can be tough.
I can see that within the legs.
But you did, I think, a great job in showing that sort of different leg type for creatures that are normally quadrupeds. They walk on four legs. But I think my favorite part of this portrait, I have two favorite parts. My first favorite part, I think, is the facial expression that you gave Tobias.
He's such a sweet boy.
It sets the mood for the whole thing, right? Like if you changed that facial expression to a more angry or somber one, he would look more like a paladin, a very somber sort of
if it was just
fighter.
Blank. If he's just a blank face, it would be totally different.
But it's just so warm. He's got the nice little curved smile. And the eyes are half lidded, so it's just looking at you with a very warm, welcoming sort of face.
Because he's a Twilight cleric, I get very like sleepy time vibes from him. Like that. And so I wanted him, because I know
he naps
that
a lot.
Yeah,
he wanted to have like, he needed this peaceful expression, but it was almost like you want him, because I wanted the like glow from like to portray him as a magic user, which is where the pop of color is inspired from,
which is so cool.
But then I wanted to I wanted to like you said, like if it was any angrier, it would, or anything else, it might look like he's attacking you or something. But I wanted it to be like, oh, this character is approaching me to give me something good, like to heal me. And I think that comes across, and that's why I love Tobias so much.
Yeah, and I was gonna say that second pop of color, that's my second favorite. That's my second favorite part.
Thank you. I'm
the
so
pop
glad
of
you
color.
like it.
It looks so good, and I think the thing that helps, not just with the facial expression, but with the whole demeanor, is the way the hands are placed. They're very peaceful. They're in a very peaceful manner. They're non-confrontational. It's very much like, would you like some help? Would you like some assistance? Yeah.
Which is so funny, because that was like one of the ideas I was playing with in the original like sketches was, oh, is he literally handing you a bun, or am I going to do like, the magic side of it? So I love that is the mood being conveyed still.
Maybe in other portraits we'll get to see the buns.
100%.
Oh, I'm for sure we're probably gonna see some Tobias brand food.
Yeah, in general.
Designs if he has his way.
Another big part of this is, I think, the feet wraps that he has look really nice too, and I think looks bring kind of the whole piece together, because it is a different kind of roughshod makeshift armor. It looks really fitting for Tobias.
Definitely, thank you. I did like that touch, just because I was learning a lot. Talking with the player for his inspirations was like, because Tobias is from a more like dry climate, like desert climate, like he would have wraps and not necessarily like shoes or like any armor on his feet. So it's like, that was really cool working with that balance of like really airy fabrics, but then the like the harshness that you need with the wraps
The
and
ruggedness.
the armor.
Yeah, the grit.
And I mean, I think this goes back to like where I was talking last time about with Breaky, and that I think the unique thing with Tobias is that none of us really knew that his hands were wrapped because they were burned.
Yeah, we didn't know.
And, you know, and he did describe it in the session and stuff like, but no one really picked up on it.
Yeah, we thought
But
they
when
were
we
just arm wraps.
Right, but being able to see it in the photo, it was like, wait, your hands are burnt? And he's like, oh yeah, I talked about it in the first episode. It just didn't really get picked up on.
Yeah, it was a
But
nuance.
because we have the art, we have that extra label and layer that we get to look at, we can see more of the nuanced features of a character that we never would have had without having this art.
Yeah, and we definitely get a little more of his backstory through those little details, I think, which is lovely. So I was really excited to see kind of if you could share some of the different brushes and techniques that you use to convey the different textures on here. Because we have
this couldn't have been easy.
We couldn't have. We have a wide array of textures all the way from fur to cloth to metal. So can you tell us a little bit about how you set that up?
Absolutely. For these like fabrics and the stuff that's like lighter textures, I definitely went for like softer brushes. Like especially for like his like toga wrap thing, I used that Muda Muda. I feel so silly saying it, but it's literally called Muda Muda Muda. Whoever made that brush, you know,
Hey.
I'm suffering for it.
Shout out.
But exactly. I'll have to link it on the Discord soon since I use it so much. But it's really cool because like the opacity is it's dialed back, so you can actually layer it. And so if I'm like layering the brush, it'll make things darker in like those creases. And I think it lends really well to fabric. So I can kind of build it up and take it away as I please. And so I went for the opposite for like the armor is because I was looking at different reference photos for like metallic textures and like gold and stuff. And
without actually using metallic colors. Because I know that's a big deal.
Just because my big thing is like, you know, evidently with all these pieces is value. And with it, you want, for metallics, you want your highlights to be like right next to your like low light, your darkest color. You want it right up against it. So it's kind of like it's almost like you can't try super hard about the metallics because if you overwork it, it'll look weird. You want it to look kind of messy and kind of like, I feel like that really lends to the shine is if you're not paying too much attention to blending and stuff like that.
And because his is a more roughshod, older sort of pieced together armor, I think it kind of fits in that motif too, where it's not going to be polished to perfection, where you can see all the perfect individual lines and it shines like a mirror.
It's not like reflective. Exactly. Like it's not like you're going to have those kind of like smooth where you can kind of like maybe pick out the background shapes from it.
It's old and tarnished in some places.
Yeah, it's got its own patina to it for sure.
Yeah, I really like that. And I think it's also really fun to see all these textures play together on the portrait because we also get the fluffiness of his fur behind all of that hard metal. And even the cloth is a little harder compared to how the fur looks. So I just really love that composition, that contrast between the softness and the hardness. Yeah,
I'm so lucky with how the fur turned out just because like with the style I went for, I was able to kind of just make like a couple like notches of like lines here and there for like some tufts of fur sticking out. But I went ham on the main details. I felt like if the reflection of that like smooth, because that's like kind of a joke now at the table, right? Is that he's got the luscious like hair commercial hair, you know,
Pante Pro V.
So I wanted to get those highlights right because if that looks like hair, it kind of like, you know, it makes it believable. It sells everyone on the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's always funny too because just like always, the player always starts looking like the character, and the character starts looking like the player. I mean, I know it's probably not unintentional, but
it's so inextricable for me. Maybe it's because I'm a player, but like that's something that is it's helped me in like the starting of all this, but it'll be interesting, especially when we get into more like NPC like drawings to see where that goes.
I like that we are sort of looking like our characters. I think it's a big part of it because we are our characters. A part of us is in that character, and while we might be stepping out of our comfort zones and playing those make believe people, we're still putting a piece of ourselves in there. So to see a piece of ourselves in the character portrait, I think is really fun.
And I mean, wouldn't you even say that kind of helps sometimes to make the character, like if you have kind of a base of like the person, you're like, okay, how can I just like warp and take their kind of looks and their expression and transfer it now on paper?
True. I think that was a lot easier for you because the player for Tobias is a taller, sort of bigger person, and it kind of fits in with the lion sort of aspect, the look of it. I think it really helped with that composition.
And I do get a peaceful vibe from the player. So like, I don't know, like I look into Tobias's peaceful eyes and like I do see that player, it's, and I think of the fun of playing with them at the table. So it is definitely there's that personal aspect to the art for me.
It's like a gentle giant. It's awesome. It's like he could crush you, but he's sweet.
But he chooses not to. How nice.
He chooses peace. And so can you give us maybe some tips or advice for how you achieve some of the harder little technical things about this portrait? Anything that you kind of could maybe make it easier on a digital artist?
I think definitely like don't be afraid to like use the same brush but like change the sizing or change the opacity on it. And I definitely like using brushes as erasers. So instead of using like the plain blocky eraser tool, I'm always telling people to use that brush that you like or that you're currently using and just set it to transparent. And then that does so much for my shading, in all honesty. And I'm able to, for like more hard opacity stuff, I'm actually able to like shave away lines and actually, instead of like just redrawing the same line, I'm carving that line with an eraser.
That is cool.
So I hope that that's something that people might take, and I'd love to hear if anyone uses that tidbit in the Discord.
I like that. I think I've used it in like physical art that I've done, but not in the digital sector yet. I think that'll be a fun thing to apply. And so I also wanted to talk about specifically how you drew inspiration for this character, because he's an anthropomorphized character. So he's an animal looking person in this world. And so how was your creative process for doing something so far out of your comfort zone?
It was definitely finding both like real, I guess, like references of like feline legs anatomy, and then like lionfolk characters that people have already kind of made like in their own style on Pinterest and all those other kind of like just sites, like aggregate sites, so that you can kind of see how other people are artistically interpreting that instead of like, I didn't want to like study a lion face and then there's like this realistic lion head on top of this, like which is a style, but like it would look mismatched for me. So I definitely started there, and definitely like drafting, like the feet went through probably like 3 different looks, just because I was like, where does this ankle go?
It can be tough sometimes. Anatomy is difficult. I don't people don't really realize how difficult it is to convey proper anatomy on a piece, and sometimes you think you have properly conveyed it and then you look at it later and you're like, that's not right. I've been there. It can be kind of tough sometimes, but I think you've done a really good job of sort of marrying all those different techniques together to create a really beautiful, compelling composition here for an anthropomorphic character. That because you haven't really, I mean, you did what was his name? Calidrax's portrait. And that was a dragon kind.
The first test.
Yep, and
that
you did a
was
great
next
job.
Level, because the Dragonborn and like just like the Scalekin type characters, they're definitely more angular, and we've talked so much about the challenges of Tobias, but man, the like dragon and lizard type characters are like the big, like they're the next level of this for me. So like drawing Miguel or drawing like
Captain
V
yeah.
have been like such a
process,
a good challenge for me for sure. I'm definitely looking like the references I have built for those are like a mountain compared to the ones I had for like everyone else so far.
But it's good practice. I think it helps make us better artists to challenge ourselves. So I like that, that it is a challenge.
Oh yeah,
and
I never shy away.
Specifically about maybe like the inspiration from either mythology or popular media that you draw for these anthropomorphized characters.
Definitely what was in my head, like I was thinking of, it's kind of funny, but like to me, I guess, but I was thinking of like Aslan, like we made the joke like way early on that he's Aslan, but like with the peaceful nature of his like expression, I definitely was like thinking of him in like the more realistic sense, and like the style that I felt fit for me was like a good in between was like the Lion King. So I was kind of thinking of like those kinds of faces and
That's
how like just the proportions and stuff. So I think having that all swimming around in my head really helped.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting just because you do get very human-like facial expressions from the Lion King characters. And then you also get, the other side from the other characters. So I really like this. But I want to kind of delve into the sort of the story that the character is trying to convey in this piece. What is he trying to tell us? And I think it goes a long way to showing kind of the person that Tobias is. He's just kind of trying to tell us it's warm here. I want to help.
I definitely feel that outstretched warmth from him. And there's something else I feel like with the armor and his little amulet that he's like the color story kind of shows him drawing power from that. And I like the little detail of like the sparkles under his cloak, like the lining of his cloak is stars. And I think it conveys a really warm character with like, I wouldn't even say secrets, but like he's got a lot more to him that maybe he's not going to trust to everyone right away.
Yeah, I think, we've all got our little dark secrets, maybe not so dark secrets, just, we've got things we don't necessarily want to share yet in the story as characters. And so I really like this because it does kind of, he's warm, but you also sense a sort of mystery about him, kind of like the Mona Lisa, right? She's warm and very inviting, but it's also, what's she hiding with that smile?
Ooh.
She's got something up her sleeve.
Mystique. Yeah. I like that.
And so I think we're getting a similar sort of look in Tobias's face, which I really appreciate. And I kind of want to also showcase the inside of the cloak that you mentioned was super cool. I think it's maybe my third favorite. I got to add a third favorite here. Because it looks like such a beautiful night sky. And I think it really ties together the sort of divine nature, because he's our first cleric in not just in the campaign but in the whole world of Extrayus, at least that we know of, right? We just started, so we don't know. But to us, he's the first one we've ever seen,
right? I mean, I think in our travels there's been some people who are like surprised, like genuinely, that he can do anything at all,
that he can heal, that he can and not just heal but like heal so much, because when he uses his spells, they're powerful heals. I think that's why he tries to use the medicine kit a little more, so it's not as like, wow.
Right. He's kind of like covering it up where it's like, oh yeah, I have real bandages. And it's like, oh, don't mind me. Just like,
I have skill too. It's not just the hand waving.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like the layers of Tobias are there too, that we haven't really seen unveiled yet. Yeah. So we might see more and more as not only the more art comes out, but also as the character starts revealing more about the backstory of Tobias.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see, what he has to say, how he got this divine power, because that's going to be a big deal. Just because, like I said, the first one we've ever met, so that's going to be definitely something to talk about.
We don't even know if he knows what's going on in this process, right?
Yeah, because he's brand new to this too. Even his sort of patron isn't fully like knowing what's going on either, so that's definitely interesting. But thank you so much for joining us for this discussion. I really appreciated delving into a sort of deep dive into Tobias's portrait and how he looks. It's probably one of my favorites to date, and it's just because they keep getting better and better as you go.
Yeah, like I hate to say it in like that, but it is the best one so far, I think, with the combination of like all the stuff that I'm learning along the way and like the different textures he's got. Like, yeah, I feel in a really good way about it, and it's really awesome to hear from you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, I can't wait for like the whole lineup.
Oh,
like,
me
once we see
too.
everyone together, I think that's really going to be the what sets to like the whole pace of the story is once you see all these like kind of misfits together in a group.
Yes, it's so fun to see them come to life on the page, and then to see them together on a portrait would be phenomenal. It would just, it would just be great. And so, and it also fosters this wonderful connection between players, I think, because it brings us together to see ourselves sort of come to life as a party as well as individuals. But thank you so much for everyone for joining us here on this podcast episode. Yeah. And if you really liked it, please like the episode as well as review and subscribe. We really appreciate any newcomers that want to hear us talk. We really love it, and we hope that you join us also on our Extrayus project Discord to share your own artwork and ideas. And EntLynk, where can we find you and your artwork?
Find me on most platforms at EntLynk_art. That's EntLynk.
Nice.
The big one is TikTok, but that's up in the air right now. But I'm tend to be on the Discord every Sunday streaming, so definitely catch me there. Awesome. That's the most social aspect of it. But definitely.
Yeah, I love watching you work on new stuff on there, so it's super fun to also be able to join in and share our perspectives as well. So that's super fun.
It's
and
a fun communal experience for sure to get like the active feedback and everything. So I hope to see everyone there.
Yeah, and obviously thanks for letting like us, newbies and nothings can kind of listen in and maybe get some tips and advice. I haven't quite started the airbrushing project, but I will soon. So we'll see how that comes out.
And thank you so much for joining us on this episode. I really appreciate it, EntLynk. And thank you so much for our listeners. We really loved having you join us here. And have yourselves a good night. And that concludes today's journey through the realm of Couple of Nerds. We hope you had a blast exploring the intricate world of Extrayus. Don't miss out on the visual extravaganza over at our YouTube page at Couple of Nerds Podcast. It's where the magic comes to life with exclusive video segments, art previews, and a peek behind the curtain.
Dive deeper into our adventures by visiting DnDWifeStories.com, your haven for all our podcast transcripts and a treasure trove of content dedicated to the captivating universe of Extrayus.
Your unwavering support is our greatest treasure. Take a moment to weave your thoughts into a review and hit that subscribe button for an enchanting journey with Couple of Nerds.
Join us beyond the podcast in the Extrayus Project Discord. Connect with us, the creators, and even the travelers themselves. Witness the magic unfold in live drawing streams, game alongside us, and step into our digital tavern, the Bard's Haven. Share your stories and characters with fellow adventurers. Visit DnDWifeStories.com for the link to join our vibrant community.
Stay tuned for more tales, more laughs, and more insight into the world of tabletop gaming. Until then, may your dice be kind, your campaigns epic, and your adventures legendary.